Sacerdotus Hangouts, the broadcast that answers doubts about God, the Catholic Church, science, philosophy, and other worldly topics from without.
Hello, welcome to Sacerdotus Hangouts. On today's program or broadcast, I'm going to speak on the topic of abortion. And it's entitled ProChoice Debunked. And I'm going to expound on a post that I have written a couple years ago, pretty much criticizing the ideas that people that call themselves pro-choice or pro-abortion use in defense for abortion. And as you may know, abortion is a topic that gets very uh, heated, out of control. It could be very ugly at times. People get carried away. They start insulting each other. Sometimes they might get physical, unfortunately, and whatnot. But there is really no need to get to that point because there's more rational ways on dealing with different ideas and offering criticism of these concepts and ideas without getting violent or nasty or whatnot. So, pretty much the pro-choice people, they like to claim that this is a woman's rights issue. Now, the word right can mean many different things, but in the context of ethics and morals and politics, we're going to examine it in that fashion. Now, since they claim abortion is a right, then this brings about a lot of conflicts, especially with the Declaration of Independence and so forth, because it says that all have a right to life, and it doesn't specify, it doesn't make distinctions. It says all have a right to life, and this right to life is inalienable, which means that it doesn't come, it cannot be taken away. It's something that's given by the Creator, as is described. And the text reads, if my computer cooperates with me right now, it says that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And that in order to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their powers from the consent of the governed. So there's a problem there when you say that women have a right to abort their children, when the Constitution says that all men have a right to exist, to have life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and that governments have to be set up with the permission of the people that elected them to make sure that these rights are protected. And obviously, this is not happening in the United States specifically, even though abortion exists throughout the whole world. But I can't go into international territory because I do not know their rules and laws over there. But I can only focus on America because that's my nation. That's what I know more about. Overall, abortion is wrong regardless where it is at. But in context of the word right, the way abortion exists today, it cannot be a right when you compare it to the words of the Declaration of Independence. Because if all men have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and the governments are supposed to be set up to protect those rights, yet abortion exists, then there's something obviously wrong. The truth of the matter is that abortion is not a right. We do not have a right to kill anyone in any stage of development. Abortion is not a right for neither the woman, man, or child. So this is a conflation that these radical feminists like to use in order to present abortion as something good, as a positive. And it does not work at all. You really think concretely on the word right and what our documents of our nation state. The next thing I want to talk about or to address is the whole argument of bodily autonomy. Many radical feminists and those who hold so-called progressive liberal ideas push the idea that this is my body to justify abortion. The logic flows as such. A woman is pregnant, right? And carries a fetus. So therefore it is in her body and she can do whatever, right? Wrong. The woman and the fetus are not the same. Human beings reproduce sexually, not asexually. We do not divide ourselves into a whole new organism. We reproduce sexually. That means that a male and female must have sexual intercourse. The male must ejaculate sperm into a woman, and the woman must have an egg ready to be fertilized. And then the egg implants itself, becomes a zygote, an embryo, fetus, etc., and is born. In order for a woman to say that the fetus and herself are one body, she will have to produce or reproduce asexually, which is not possible. Asexual reproduction is defined as, quote, one individual produces offspring that are genetically identical to itself. These offspring are produced by mitosis, end quote. And this is from biology.about.com in the genetics section and asexual reproduction category. And furthermore, the fetus and the woman have different DNA and blood types. And this comes from O'Rahilly, Rona, and Muller, Human Embryology and Teratology. A fertilized egg has 50% chromosomes from the mother and the father, and this comes from the site nih.gov. A fetus is in gestation also might have a different gender if the child has XY chromosomes. So in other words, a woman that's pregnant could give birth to a child of a different gender that's not a female. So obviously the woman it cannot be her body, because how can you be woman and a man at the same time? It's not possible. So the idea that this is my body has no foundation in science, embryology, biology, etc. The woman's body is hers. She has her own DNA, her own chromosome pattern and gender, etc., etc. And the fetus's body, the embryo's body, the zygote's existence is his or her, depending on what gender it is. So there are two distinct bodies, not just one. So this is important that we have to really focus on this. And see that the whole argument that this is my body just does not work. It does not flow logically. The next thing I want to address is the fetus as an aggressor. And this is probably one of the most strangest arguments that I have ever heard. Some of these pro-choice people, pro-abortion people, claim that the fetus somehow attacks the woman, that it somehow does not belong there, it's an aggressor. However, biology teaches otherwise. A woman's body is designed to reproduce. It evolved to reproduce. She has ovaries, fallopian tubes, a uterus, and a vagina. The ovaries regulate hormones and produce eggs with the genes of the woman. These eggs are released at different intervals and wait for fertilization in the fallopian tube. And you can find this in AmericanPregnancy.org, thefertilityrealm.com. So this is common knowledge that we all should have learned in 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, high school, when we began to study biology. This should be common knowledge. And to have people out there claim that the fetus, the unborn child, is somehow an aggressor, something that's not supposed to be there, a tumor. I've heard some people claim that an unborn child is a tumor. It's just scientific illiteracy. It's awful. How they twist science, they distort science, they negate science in order to push these ideas, this sophism that doesn't make any sense at all. Once fertilized, the egg travels to the uterus as a zygote. It implants and starts to gestate. And this is from webmd.com. This fertilization or conception is the beginning of a new human person. Quote, a zygote is the beginning of a new human being, end quote. And this is for more the developing human, clinically oriented embryology. So science teaches already that the child, the unborn child, is a human being. You cannot deny this fact that it's a human being in gestation. Because how else do human beings come into existence? How else are human beings born? We are born through the process of when the mother gets impregnated through intercourse and so forth, and we gestate, and then we're born, we're here. We're not delivered by stalks, or we don't fall from the sky or come out of plants like the Cabbage Patch Dolls or something like that. There's a whole biological process that's at work here that we know very well about. We know a lot about this. We're not ignorant of this. We know extremely well about how reproduction works, the biology, the gestation of human beings, and so forth. We know a lot about this. Moreover, a female's pelvis is different than that of a male. It is wider and symmetrically set up to hold and deliver a baby. And this is from medterms.com. So the woman's body, her own body, is designed differently, is shaped differently. Her waist, her pelvis is wider than the male's in order to be able to carry an unborn child, sometimes twins, triplets. The vagina cervix itself dilates during birth in order to allow a baby's head or body to pass through. And this is from AmericanPregnancy.org. So you see the whole organism of the human female is designed to carry children and give birth to them. Everything functions to a certain degree, not always perfectly, but to a certain degree, to allow for this process of life and reproduction. That being said, a woman's body is biologically and naturally designed to house and help develop a zygote, embryo, and fetus. To say that the fetus is an aggressor is not science. It is hateful feminist rhetoric based on fallacies. The next thing I want to talk about is the idea that the fetus is a parasite. This is another strange argument presented by some pro-choice and pro-abortion advocates. They claim that a fetus is a parasite or parasitic because it is quote-unquote living off the mother. Once again, this is an attack on human life based on fallacious feminist rhetoric. All life comes from a beginning point. No one or no thing appears fully developed. It does not happen. Even a chicken, an egg, is developing within that egg. Even a marsupial is developing in the sac. It doesn't just pop out of nowhere within seconds. There's a process to this. A cat does not fall out of the sky fully developed, neither does a dog, fish, or human being. All organisms, plant or animal, begin at one point. From that point, they go through a series of developmental stages that do not end at birth. So our whole human existence goes through different changes, developmental changes. We're zygotes, we're embryos, fetus, newborns, infants, toddlers, children, pre-adolescent, adolescent, young adult, adult, middle age, senior citizen, etc. So we go through a whole series of developmental stages. And this information comes from nottingham.ac.uk and the humanities, naf.edu, milletprime.com, embryo.chronolab.com. This is how it has been for however long life has existed on this planet called Earth. That's how it's always been. And again, we know about these things. This is science. We know about these things. There's no reason that anybody should be adopting these pro-choice arguments that the fetus is a parasite and that it's an aggressor, so forth, because it's just nonsense. It's hogwash. Now, is a fetus a parasite or parasitic? The answer is no. A parasite has to be of another species. That's very important. A parasite, in order for an organism to be a parasite, to be classified via taxonomy as a parasite, it has to be of a different species. It invades a different species and survives off of it. We have mites all over our skin, different mites. Some of them live in our pores. These are parasites, parasitic, because they're different organisms. They're not human. That's why they are called parasite. They live off of us, off of our dense skin cells, our oily sebaceous secretions that come out of the glands, and so forth. Quote, a parasite is defined as an organism of one species living in or on an organism of another species, a heterospecific relationship, and deriving its nourishment from the host, is metabolically dependent on the host, end quote. This is from Cheng, General Parasitology. Again, this is science. I'm not making this up. That's why I'm giving you the sites where you can go look it up for yourself. Take the book out in the library. Use Google Scholar and research this information. The relationship between a zygote, embryo, fetus, and mother is solely dependent, not parasitic, if we are to believe the biological classification of a parasite. Now, there are changes in the woman, or changes rather, in the woman that are caused by the pregnancy. However, they are related to hormonal changes, not disease, as would be in the case of parasitic or a parasite invading a host. So pregnancy does cause many changes in the woman. They get nauseous, they get certain urges to eat certain things and whatnot. But this is due to hormonal changes, not because of a parasite. Because the parasite will cause disease, it will cause infection. A fetus does not cannibalize his or her own mother. A parasite does cannibalize its host. It feeds off its host. This relationship is called motherhood. The relationship between the mother and the fetus is called motherhood. If a fetus were parasitic or a parasite, it would not have come from within the woman's own genetic material, because it has to be two different species. The woman's immune system will attack it as if it were a foreign body. The antibodies of the woman actually help with the growth and development of the fetus and placenta, and this is from reallab.com. The idea that a fetus is parasite or parasitic is flawed and not compatible with science. The fetus lacks the qualities for being classified as a parasite. Claiming that a fetus is a parasite because he or she is dependent on the mother is absurd, and it's a misuse of definitions. It's a wordplay. It is a misrepresentation of the natural function of reproduction and pregnancy. If a fetus were a parasite, then the mother, is one as well. However, that is not the case, because for a parasite to be classified as such, again, it will have to be of a different species, invading another species. A parasite is a parasite, and a human fetus is a human fetus. Pro-choice rhetoric cannot twist taxonomy to suit feminist rhetoric. They are both compatible with one another. The next thing I want to talk about is the idea that the unborn are not persons. Bullies often attack smaller persons than themselves. They mock them, tease them, treat them as insignificant. And we have been seeing that a lot lately. Well, the same is pretty much done by pro choice advocates, pro abortion advocates. They claim that the fetus is not a person because he or she cannot feel, think, or are sentient. Some go as far as to merely cite laws to claim their position is correct. However, let's study the issue scientifically speaking. What does it mean to be sentient? It means, quote, responsive to or conscious of sense impressions. And this is from the Merriam-Webster Dictionary.com. So to be sentient, that means that we have to be aware or conscious. We have to be able to feel and perceive. Whether or not a fetus is aware or sentient is inconclusive at this moment. Even though recent studies show that fetus and embryos learn language from the mother, even from within the womb, and they recognize voices. So there's obviously a sense of awareness there, sentience. However, we do know that brainwaves have been recorded as early as 5 to 6 weeks. And this is from ehd.org. These brainwaves demonstrate that this organism is not just a blob of cells. It's not a blob of cells. We all are a blob of cells if you really look at it. But rather, it is an organism of a particular species in a gestational development. They show that there is a brain activity. The fetus is alive. If uninterrupted, it will be born and will continue this development as it grows and changes. To say a fetus or younger is not a person because it is not sentient is erroneous and a conclusion based on lack of evidence. First, we do not have enough science to really say this. Until we can decipher the brain waves detected in the fetus's brain, we cannot assume that they are not aware, are not thinking, and cannot feel. Second, human life is a process of development. We are not born with everything. Even an infant is not totally sentient. For example, the phenomenon of object permanence shows this. Object permanence is, quote, a child's ability to know that objects continue to exist even though they can no longer be seen or heard, end quote. And this is from psychology.about.com. When an infant is shown something in front of his or her face, he or she will respond as if he or she is seeing it or hearing it. However, when the sound is gone or the object is placed behind the infant or even on the side, he or she will think it disappeared from existence. An infant is not aware of the 3D environment he or she is living in. His or her perception is limited. That is to say, his or her sentience is limited. Now this begs the question, are infants human? According to pro-choice logic, the answer is no. Or even autistic people, or people with mental handicaps, or even people who just have trouble studying or learning. They wouldn't be considered human if we are to believe pro-choice logic. But of course we shouldn't because it's nonsense. Infants are not fully aware or sentient, so they are not human, right? If anything, pro-choice might even claim that they are half human. This logic is just fallacious. Sentience, awareness, and or feeling are not requirements for human traits. Some infants, toddlers, children, and adults have congenital insensitivity to pain, or SIPA. In this disorder, those affected cannot feel pain or have sensation. They can touch scalding hot water and not feel it despite their skin boiling off. Now, by pro-choice's logic, these people are not human either because they cannot feel or have sensation. Furthermore, some mentally handicapped people, mentally challenged individuals, are not fully aware and need help with even the most basic needs. Are they not human because of this? In reality, all of the above are human. Human life is a process, and we all come in different shapes and forms. It begins at conception. A zygote, embryo, fetus, and infant all have the same DNA, if not killed in abortion, of course. When you and I were zygotes, embryos, etc., we just were at a different stage of development. We were not of a different species when we were in the womb. We were already human. The claim a preborn human is not human or a person is absurd, just like thinking an infant is not a person because it is not fully aware. A human is a person despite of what stage of development he or she is in or what state of health it is in. Laws cannot define personhood. In the USA, laws consider African Americans 3/5 humans. Imagine that. Black people were only 3/5 humans or persons. And people back then were pro and against this idea, just like people are pro preborn are persons and against preborn are persons today. History seems to really do repeat itself. Stupidity seems to be contagious throughout the generations. But just like this idea of blacks being three-fifths the South would protest education and in the end the attitude of prejudice, so too will this discrimination toward the preborn end. The next thing I want to talk about is the fetus is a blob of cells with tissue, and I'm sure you've heard this a lot. Pro-choice advocates or pro-abortion advocates disregard the destruction of a fetus by claiming it as merely cells or tissue. It is a cancer, some of them say, or a tumor, as some of them have stated on Twitter and different social networks. According to the medical dictionary, a fetus is, quote, the unborn offspring from the end of the 8th week after conception, when the major structures have formed unto birth. Up until the 8th week, the developing offspring is called an embryo, end quote. And this is from medterms.com. Now notice that the definition says, quote, when the major structures have formed, end quote. What are these major structures? They are organ systems. Biology teaches that life takes different forms. The most basic form is a cell. A cell is a structural biological unit of an organism, and this comes from biology/online.org rather. Some definitions add the word basic to this, for example from medterms.com. In layman's terms, a cell is a building block of life. They contain a nucleus with DNA, cytoplasm, endoplasmic reticulum, mitochondria, etc. When these cells are together, they form cellular tissue. And this is from emc.maricopa.edu. So the cell has all these different components within itself, which are called organelles. And these organelles come together and they create a functioning cell. Now, when cells cluster together of the same type, they create cellular tissue. And this cellular tissue can come in many different forms, for example, connective, smooth, epithelial, and so on. And these are the different types of muscles we have on the bones, the muscle of the heart, the muscles that there are throughout our bodies, the biceps, and so forth. When these tissues come together, they form an organ. Now, an organ is defined as, quote, a group of tissues that perform a specific function or group of functions. And this comes from biology/online.org. This definition seems to match the pro-choice's one of a fetus. However, notice the error in classification. A fetus is, quote, unborn offspring from the end of the 8th week when major structures have formed, end quote. So a fetus cannot be an organ or a group of tissues that perform a specific function, as pro-choice rhetoric suggests. A fetus is an organism, or, quote, an individual living thing that can grow, respond to stimuli, and so on, end quote. And this is from biology/online.org. Once again, pro-choice rejects biology in favor of feminist rhetoric, which contradicts the truth. So you see a big problem there with pro-choice completely ignoring the facts of science, of biology, embryology, and so forth. And this is unfortunate. And we live in the 21st century. There's no reason why people should be distorting science to promote these nonsensical ideas. There should be no reason why people should even believe it if they were truly smart, literate in science. Lastly, abortion is not murder or killing, the pro-choice, pro-abortion crowd claims. This statement made by pro-choice people deals more with the legal definition of it. Pro-life people, when they say abortion is murder, do not speak of it in legal terms. They are speaking of it in a way any dictionary would define it as such. And, for example, quote, the unlawful premeditated killing of one human being by another, end quote. And this is from OxfordDictionaries.com. The legal definition of it varies from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. And this is from legal/dictionary.thefreedictionary.com. However, the general idea is there, the intentional killing of the human being. Now, is abortion murder? Technically speaking, yes. Under the current abortion laws, no. Because these laws tend to play a game with the words. Abortion is murder in that it is the intentional killing of a human being by another. I have already shown how biology and embryology articulately presents the unborn as a human being, even in its early stages of development. So it would be foolish to deny science and claim abortion does not kill human beings. And here are some quotes from experts. And this is from Dr. Jaime Gordon. Quote, by all the criteria of modern molecular biology, life is present from the moment of conception, end quote. From the HarperCollins Illustrated Medical Dictionary, quote, embryo, an organism in its early stage of development, in a man from the time of conception to the end of the second month in the uterus, end quote. From Langmanda Medical Embryology, 3rd edition, quote, the development of human beings begins with fertilization, a process by which two highly specialized cells, the spermatozoon from the male and the oocyte from the female, unite to give rise to a new organism, the zygote, end quote. Von Sattler, the development of human beings with fertilization, process by which the spermatozoon from the male and the oocyte from the female unite to give rise to a new organism, zygote. From O'Reilly, Rona, and Mueller, although life is a continuous process, fertilization is a critical landmark because under ordinary circumstances, a new genetically distinct human organism is thereby formed. The combination of 23 chromosomes present in each pronucleus results in 46 chromosomes in the zygote. Thus, the diploid number is restored and the embryonic genome is formed. The embryo now exists as a genetic unity, end quote, and the diploid is when the chromosomes, genes divide. You see the word die in divide, and they become one, they unite, and it creates a whole new genetic unity of a person. From Geraldine Lux Flanagan, Beginning Life. Every baby begins life with the tiny globe of the mother's egg. It is beautifully translucent and fragile and encompasses the vital links in which life is carried from one generation to the next. When in this tiny sphere, great events take place. When one of the father's sperm cells, like the ones gathered here around the egg, succeeds in penetrating the egg, it becomes united with it. A new life can begin. From the biology of prenatal development. National Geographic, quote, biologically speaking, human development begins at fertilization, end quote. From the National Geographic, in the womb. The two selves gradually and gracefully become one. This is the moment of conception, when an individual's unique set of DNA is created, a human signature that never existed before and will never be repeated. End quote. From the Harvard University Medical School, Professor Michelin Matthews Roth. Quote, it is incorrect to say that the biological data cannot be decisive. It is scientifically correct to say that an individual human life begins at conception. End quote. From Dr. Alfred M. Baggiani, Professor of Pediatrics and Obstetrics in the University of Pennsylvania. Quote, I have learned from my earliest medical education that human life begins at the time of conception. From Dr. Watson A. Bowles, University of Colorado Medical School. Quote, the beginning of a single human life is, from a biological point of view, a simple and straightforward matter. The beginning is conception. End quote. From the report of the Subcommittee on Separation of Powers to the Senate Judiciary Committee S/15897 Congress, First Session, 1981, Section 7. Quote, physicians, biologists, and other scientists agree that conception marks the beginning of life of a human being, a being that is alive and is a member of the human species. There is overwhelming agreement on this point in countless medical, biological, and scientific writings. Now, I can go on and on, but we get the point that a human being begins at conception, at fertilization. If science is right, and human beings do begin at conception, then destroying that conception is killing, and if done intentionally, then it is murder. As a matter of fact, the Unborn Victims Act also shows how intentionally killing the offspring of a woman is murder. The law even calls the unborn children, and you can find this in the gpo.gov. So this is an example of how pro-choice fails to present its arguments logically and scientifically speaking, and morally speaking. Abortion is nothing more than a way to try to escape the world's problems, and there's other ways that we could face those problems without resorting to killing the unborn children. So I hope this Sacerdotus Hangouts tonight was educative for you and will help you answer those pro-choice arguments and so forth using science. Because in the 21st century, abortion should not exist. This is something from primitive times. But unfortunately, it does. And judges, the Supreme Court, so forth, they really need to educate themselves on the biology and the science of life and stop trying to rewrite life in order to appease sophism or all kinds of nonsense that's out there. Thank you for listening. God bless, and Mary keep.